today I am joined by my very good friend and my guest, Mr. Kristjan Byfield from the Depositary. How are you, sir?
I'm good, my man. How are you, Mincy?
I'm easier, faster, better. No, that's you, right?
That is us.
That is
Or
that
the
is
agents
you.
that use
So
us,
we're
actually.
here to talk about my favorite genre that I famously overlooked years ago. When I first heard of it, I went, tenancy conclusions, not a problem for most people. And then I went and talked to property managers, and they said the one thing that they can't survive without is the depository. So clearly, I got it wrong and they got it right. You are all the way down the line now. Many years on, many happy clients, loads and loads of great reviews, loads of awards as well. And you're doing what you promised to do, and you've revolutionized the way that we end tenancies. However, no revolution would be complete without the introduction of AI. So, on that note, I hand over to Mr. Kristjan.
You hand over to me, mate. Well, thank you for those lovely words. And yeah, we're getting great feedback from our clients. We listen very closely to them. As everyone knows, we're agents ourselves. And I think that's helped us build a great product. But that's always been our focus, the product. That's, rather than big sales claims and all this sort of stuff, we have always focused on just trying to make the product constantly better. And when AI kind of really hit the kind of main scene 2 years ago, it was really exciting. But I think we all saw a lot of those kind of rushed things that came out that, oh, here's a property description, or here's how you create a headshot of yourself. Or whatever it was. And it was fun, but it didn't really dynamically change anything. And like a lot of tech companies, we thought, oh God, we've got to do something. We've got to do something really quick. We've got to figure out a quick way to plug this in. And then actually kind of came around to the fact that no, just plugging AI in a year, 2 years ago for the sake of sticking that label on our product when it didn't really add any value wasn't really going to help anyone. And I don't think agents love buzzwords at the best of times anyway. So I don't think it was going to win us much. And we spent about a year figuring out really where we thought the power of AI could be leveraged in our platform. And we identified 3 areas, and that was how proposed deductions or liabilities are compiled and presented, negotiating with a tenant, and then the data around it. And so we've prioritized the first of those two. We released them just before Christmas, and we've been working with agents to start this year just to refine them. And the feedback we're getting is phenomenal. So yeah, I mean, I've done a couple of recordings to show people kind of what they do, and yeah, I'd love to share it with your audience.
Well, let's have a go. Let's have a look.
All right, see if we can get it to work. So, right, this should be the right one. Have you got that, my friend?
We've got it, yeah.
Okay, if I go full screen. Right, so this is our smart proposals or smart merge assistant. So I'm going to press play in a sec. I actually go through 2 different tenancies because there's a couple of different ways we've designed this. And again, that was a really important part for us with AI is I think a lot of agents are excited about the premise of AI, but understandably and legitimately are quite concerned about what that means. How do they keep their kind of human professional value within the offering? How do they kind of have an overview or some sort of control about what it's doing?
Yeah.
And it's all stuff that we thought about. And so we've designed our tools to be used in at least a couple, if not more, different ways. So let's get going. So inventory partner integration, we pull all of the potentially tenant liable dilapidations out of checkout reports. So that's photos, descriptions, everything. So when a checkout happens, all of this lands within seconds of a checkout report being completed. And then the first thing any agents need to do is what I'm doing now is you just need to review it and take out anything that's pulled through that's not relevant. So it might be, in this instance, like an old coffee table. You know, the landlord knows it's worthless and knackered and needs replacing. And so once you've done that, the first way you can use our tool is you can go through and you can choose which items you want to merge together. For whatever reason, and maybe the contractor you work with, that's how you just choose to present them. You can edit the category they're in, how they're referred to. We've got a ledger labels on there, which are optional. So you can put things like refund to landlord, refund to agent, etc. You assign a value. It's got all of the notes that we've pulled through from the checkout report, but you can then add your human input. So you can put, I think I'm adding a note here about the fact that the tenant was warned at an inspection.
Yeah.
Stuff wasn't up to scratch.
That makes a lot of sense to lump them together, doesn't it? Because sometimes where you see them absolutely itemized, you think, oh, hang on, someone's having me on. It can wind the tenant up even more in a negotiation. So that does make a lot of sense.
Well, we've done this where it's itemized, and what we used to do before is we would just pull all these facts together, which was great, but it was a bit much. It was a lot of facts to be presented that cold. So what we've now done is leveraged AI to take those facts with any input you add to that, and then you can turn it into a really effective, convincing proposal. And you can edit that, you can reject it and put in other prompts until you get to where you want to. And then when you're ready, you click merge. And the glory of AI, it takes a little while to put it all together, but there you've got it. And that has now pulled that all together. And we're now just going to merge the other two. This one is mainly just blown light bulbs. So I think I had in a note here which says something along the lines of there's a stipulation in the contract that it's £5 per bulb. With my lightning fast typing, everyone gets to see why I'm not a coder. And then click improve. And again, we've taken those facts with the contract reference, and just turned it into a nice proposal there. So this is the first way that you can merge deductions if, as an agent, you want control over how those items are linked together. So that's what we call smart proposals. And so we're then going to hop over to another tenancy where I've done another checkout report. Now this one, to give the kind of, to show the power of this, I've done a much more extensive checkout report. So anyone working in the student area or doing large HMOs or anything like that will be very common to large checkout reports with a lot of dilapidations coming through. Now, same process when they import. You need to do the first thing where you go through and you take out anything that's not relevant. So I've selected a couple of things in here at random, again, on the premise that these are all things that are kind of been pre-agreed with the landlord, or, you know, that you've got notes on. So we're going to take out those 3 items. And now, rather than go through the clicks, we're just going to use the smart merge button at the top. And what this now does is it merges them by category. So everything classed as cleaning is pulled together. Everything regarded as maintenance, gardening, it automatically does it.
And that doesn't need any of your separate input. That's all there now.
It's already written the AI description. It's collated all the photos, all the reference points from the inventory.
And it's lightning fast as well, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you saw that's probably pulled together like 30 dilapidations, and all you have to do is add a value. Now, you can improve the description. If you want to put in the value and click improve, it will typically work the value into the description. Or again, you can still add comments or copy and paste notes from your CRM and click improve, and it will work those in. But theoretically, all you need to do at this stage is assign a value to each one, which literally takes as much time as we're seeing now. And you can reference contract clauses and things like that. And that's it. We've now taken, I think, 60 dilapidations we imported. We've put them into 3 categories, really comprehensive. And that goes off to your landlord to review and sign off before it goes off to the tenant. So that is that one, my friends. I'm gonna stop sharing for a secondo.
So that has practical implications, doesn't it? It's a time saver, which I know a lot of suppliers say their product is a time saver, but genuinely it is. But I think also it has some material benefits in terms of how it then presents it to both landlord and tenant, and in actual fact should improve the outcome. Um,
That's very much our hope. I mean, we always try to look at more than one benefit of an outcome whenever we do anything in the platform. And so, yes, our kind of primary focus on this was how do we continue to reduce the time and work involved. But something else we've seen, and because we gather a lot of data and we do a lot of reporting, we know what good looks like. And good starts at the proposal stage. How a proposal is presented and framed has an impact on how the negotiation goes with your tenant and what the outcome at the end is, and the impression that you give on your client, the landlord, throughout that. So yes, step one is about saving time, but step two is for our top performers. Let's say our top 10% of users who deliver the very best results. They probably won't need this from a linguistic point of view because they're already rewording things in this kind of manner. But for the other 80-90% of our users, it will add some to a lot of benefit.
yeah,
Because without going into detail, we also know what bad looks like. We know what good looks like, we know what average looks like, and we know what bad looks like.
Well, I've seen from those photos you showed us, which I presume are dummy photos, you know what bad looks like.
Yeah, but we know what bad looks like as an agent. We know what bad work looks like. And one of the things we wanted to do, I think one of the things you need to understand about tech is that if you just make things easy and quick, that doesn't necessarily make things better. In fact, actually, by making it easier, you sometimes make things worse because people get lazy, because it's easier to do a mediocre job than to do a good job. And so what we've seen in the platform where that kind of negative influence has crept in, where it's been easy to see below or see previous response, this requires less effort but produces a better outcome. And so that's kind of our focus. So that was what we focused on smart proposals. And then alongside that, we've also built a negotiation assistant. A lot of the things we talked about, property managers are really good organizers, collators, etc. They're not always great negotiators. Sometimes they've had no negotiation training, they've never been front line, they can get pulled too much into a client or landlord narrative. They can get too defensive because they've worked really hard to look after that tenant, and then they just kind of get it thrown back in their face.
We get emotional, let's face it.
We get emotional. Yeah. We're humans, right? And I think, and something that's always underpinned everything we've done with Depositary is that you want that human element, you want that professionalism, that expertise, but fundamentally it comes back to law, contract, and evidence. And that's what should underpin everything in this process. And we're driving everything with. So if I share the next recording with you guys. Have you got that?
We've got it.
We've got it. We go full screen on that, and that is now playing. So I'm just going to pause it 1 second. So what we've got here, the proposals that we saw in that last demo, the really big one that we compiled and we sent off, the tenant has now replied to. And what we can see down the bottom, one of the things our platform does when the landlords sign off is, in most cases, it captures a minimum that landlord will accept. Now, sometimes that's the proposal amount, but we do encourage landlords to give our agents some sort of bandwidth. And so what they can see straight away, the idea with that is an agent can then just crack on and negotiate. They know the minimum they've got to achieve. They don't have to constantly liaise back and forth.
Yeah, you know what the upside is and where, yeah, I can see that.
So we've got that in there to work to. On each of these ones, you can see in the faded color what the original proposed amount was, what the latest response was. And when you drop it down, you can see what the tenants come back with. Like this one where the tenant spent 4 hours with his mum scrubbing the house from top to bottom and returned it cleaner than he got it. Like no tenant ever says that. And again, I wanted to show the different ways you can use this. So you can put in nothing. You can leave the amount and the response blank, suggest response, and our AI knows where it's got to sit between the minimum and the maximum and the negotiation to date, and we'll fill that in. For this one, we're going to give it an amount because we want to specify exactly what we want that amount to be, but we're going to leave the context blank and it writes a response around the value that we've given. And in this case, we're going to upload a receipt as proof as well to that one. And lastly, with this one, we're going to put in an amount, but we're also going to put in some notes to give it context. And in this case, we've got a tenant who's basically said, oh, the neighbour offered to do it for 100 quid, so I'll give you 100 quid. And the PM's going back and going, with the greatest of respect, you could have done that, but you didn't. We're obliged to use professionals with suitable insurance who come in and do a professional job. It's going to cost more money, and you were warned we can't use the neighbour. Now, again, these could be things that they're writing up, like I am. This could be a note in the CRM that they just copy and paste and drop in. And again, when they're happy, improve response, and it will just collate the amount with that response in a slightly more comprehensive manner. And again, taking in the context of the negotiation before. And I've just closed that prompt to respond because now you can see you're going back with £835. You're well over the landlord minimum. And yeah. And rather than spend hours and emotions getting drawn into this kind of emotionally charged moment.
It's good this because it also it reminds you, because sometimes in the emotion of it you get carried away with the fight and you forget really what's at stake, and that gives you a reminder. Well, actually, landlord's expectations or the minimum is this. That's what we're talking about here, nothing else.
Yeah.
So, I think it's great that you get that kind of reminder, but also that it takes care of it for you.
Yeah, what does the landlord want and need? What does the law state? What does the contract state? And what does the evidence prove? And it is really those things. And, hopefully we're making it really easy for agents to give really effective proposals and responses in seconds. They can still add that value. They've still got that knowledge, their personal knowledge, their technical knowledge, their transactional knowledge. They've got the notes from the CRM they can pull in when they're relevant. They can add in inspection reports or whatever if they're relevant. And then, but in seconds, they get this really detailed, compelling response. And no one can argue with how professional and effective that looks and comes across. And we're already starting to see better results. We're seeing the agents that have been using this the last 3-4 months, their conclusion times are creeping down a little bit. But importantly, one of our reports is claim versus payment. So that is, we track what is the original total proposed versus the final total agreed. And what we're seeing is the average is creeping up. And as I touched on before, the top performers, they haven't changed. The top performers are very much performing where they were, but the lower end are 20, 30% of lowest performers in that performance bracket of claim versus final payment. Those numbers are creeping up quite significantly. And that's really, that's where I think technology should sit. It should make people's jobs better, but it should also leverage their professional and transactional knowledge. That's hopefully what we're doing.
It looks amazing. I'm sure you're getting feedback from the agents. And I think again, we harp on about this, but it's so rare that it's worth shouting about. Because it's a solution that is built by an agent, it already carries all of our concerns through to actual practical implementation. But you guys are particularly good at listening to your customers as well, and almost taking that feedback and then where possible, implementing it as quickly as possible. This is brilliant.
I think the thing is with feedback, it's not always the big stuff. There was something I talked about on those screens. I was talking about the ledger labels.
Yeah.
That is something that came specifically out of feedback from our clients. It wasn't a big technical thing. It wasn't hard to build, but The moment we released it, probably a third of our agents were like, oh my God, this is fantastic. Because, again, a lot of operations, there is that separation between the accounts team and property management. And that's true in small and big businesses, quite interestingly. So this is stuff that benefits pretty much clients of any size. Because you'll have the property managers driving the transaction, but actually when it gets to reconciliation, the accounts team, whether they're sat in a different part of the office or in a different part of the country, they've got everything there they need, and they know how they're allocating that within the business accounts and what's been approved and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think, you know, we keep building, we keep getting better. Like I said, it's all about the product for us, and yeah, that's what we keep doing.
I think you could tell, ladies and gentlemen, he's immensely proud of this. Kristjan, what's next? Where do we go? The possibilities are endless with the technology is evolving at such a rapid rate. We've seen, you know, dev departments replaced by, I mean, that's really where some of the massive improvements are being made in terms of timescales,
Yeah.
whereas suppliers used to say, I'll fling that over to our developers. It literally used to land with some humans who have a million different things to do. They would then prioritize it according to what they think is easiest to implement and get out of the way, and then they tackle some of the bigger things. That's all changing, isn't it? And behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think generally things are happening faster. I mean, it feels like we had that early kind of slightly whatever kind of kitsch adoption of AI in the early days. And it feels like we've now just suddenly hit like that next big wave. Like I said, we got ours out just before Christmas. But, you know, this week we've had Street release and announced Cortex on Monday.
Yeah.
Alto are releasing their tools tomorrow. And Reapit, not wanting to be left out, have also started shouting about their AI agents, which we all knew they were building. They were very open about that, but they're now starting to come out of beta and they're starting to be used by agents. And obviously you've got Greenhouse OS, who've very much been building out different kind of little AI agents to service different parts of the process. I think it's starting to get really interesting. But yeah, you know, agents just need to be brave. I think there's a lot of change coming with AI. And I know a lot of agents are concerned about what that means to kind of the personality of their business, the individuality of their business. This kind of thing, if we all use the same tools, are we all kind of running the same business? I mean, that's never stopped the fact that there's 25,000 agencies up and down the country who insist we're all doing something unique and different to every other
And yet
agent.
we all advertise in the same place, say the same
We all
thing.
charge similar fees, you know. So look, I think there's still plenty to add there, but I do think agents need to be wrapping their head around AI. And if AI products in the wild, so to speak, still feels quite overwhelming, and I get it. You know, there's a lot of suppliers, like I said, the CRMs I've just mentioned and us, but also Inventory Hive, Inventory Base. There's Camma and all sorts of companies I know that are layering this stuff in. So you don't have to figure it out. We're figuring out the best places to put it and the best places to leverage it. You know, we've done our 2 big AI releases now. We're probably not going to do anything with AI now till probably towards the end of this year, because we always identified 3 areas, and that was proposals, negotiations, and data. And I think one thing with data, we've talked since the day of dawn about data and how it's the gold or the oil within your business. I think, like so many agents, so many of us are so small in operation. We know we've got this immense amount of data, but we just don't have the time, the energy, the capacity, or really the knowledge to a certain extent to understand how to extract it and leverage it.
Yeah.
So I think this is the next kind of thing of that's the next thing AI will help, particularly smaller businesses do, is to do that. And that will be our goal towards the end of the year, is we've got all this data, all this analytics, all this reporting, and we're going to be leveraging that. So as agents, you'll be able to pull out benchmark statistics underpinned by our data, that will prove that on average you return a deposit in X amount of days, or, you know, on average in the last year you've secured your clients 96% of proposed deductions, but backed up and certified by our data that you can put a statistics in your marketing analysis
You can use
on your website as a social media image. And I think that's where we're going to leverage AI, is just to take all the data that we've got that can be a bit overwhelming and just give agents some really punchy stuff that they can put, like I said,
snapshots. Yeah.
as proof. You know, as agents, we talk a lot about what we're good at, but it's very hard to evidence it. So what we want to give is we want to give agents data that they can really easily leverage
Case studies effectively that they can showcase. I think that's well worth it. And so what are you going to do with all the time that you get back, when now that it's easier, faster and better? You can actually invest that in being more human and actually doing the things that AI will never be able to do. But I think that's where your clients as well will value the contact. They don't want to be bothered about every minutiae of a deduction. That's bad. That's bad management. But what they do want is a phone call every now and again to see, is there anything else we could do? Is this all okay? Just the simple human touch points. And I think you're freeing people up to do that.
Well, I was talking to an agent on a demo today, and that was a really interesting question that they came up with, because they were like, love it, can see how this is going to help with like 80, 90, 95% of tenancies. They're like, what do we do about that really tricky 5% where like either they just refuse to engage with anything technical, or, you know, they're a really old valued client and we just really like to actually call up the phone and do it in a really personal way. And you know, I was like, you still do that. I was like, this should make you even better at that,
Yeah.
because you're not having to worry about the other 80, 90, 95%, because that is just pulling through the system. That 5, 10, 15% that requires the extra effort, or you want or need to put in the extra effort, you can. Like, it isn't an all things. We don't want every agent to become 100% digital and do everything rigidly within our platform, because then every agent does become the same. And we all keep on talking about the real value in agency is the service you deliver, how you make people feel, how you leverage the knowledge and expertise and experience of your team. And that's what we aim to do. We aim to just make the other fluffy, turgid stuff easier, so you can focus on where you really deliver value.
I've just written down on my pad here, mental load of a state agency. We talk about mental load a lot in our house, but it's a lot to carry, and I think this frees you up to really go after the bits that count rather than carrying it around with you and all the emotions that go with it, because it's hard. It is hard, and this is the non-glamorous end of it, really, isn't it? But it's where you can really sort of win hearts and minds with landlords and tenants. I think is very important.
It's really unglamorous, and you know, it brings me back to where the idea first came from and why we decided to build Depositary. It was our team at base that literally, we did our kind of annual company audit, and every single member of our team sat there and said, please do something about end of tenancy. It's just horrible. You know, it's not enjoyable. The tasks are either low to zero value, or we're reiterating something we've already explained 2 or 3 times, or we're getting these quite heated responses, either from a landlord or a tenant, or both if you're really unlucky. And it just feels like a bit of a no-win. And you know, that's the foundation of where it came from. It was about changing how our staff felt about that part of the process, and how they felt about working here because of that part of the process. And we've had that repeatedly over the years. We've had property managers who've done this job for 5, 10, 15 years. Quite often, actually, they're quite resistant to coming onto our platform at first, because they're like, yeah, I've done this 10, 15 years. I know what I'm doing. I have a system. You know, and then 1, 2, 3 months later, we'll get an email being like, actually, this is now my favorite bit of tech. because I didn't realize, like you said, mental load. I didn't realize how much of my day this took up.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much I spent on weekends worrying about the responses I was coming into on a Monday morning of tenants chasing me for this and landlords arguing about this. And and that, it's always great to hear from a business owner or a leader what it does for their business. But because of why we built the platform in the first place, I absolutely friggin' love getting those emails or those voicemails from frontline staff going, "This has changed my life. This is the best."
And the beauty of it, from the same staff who were convinced that this might threaten their job rather than help them. And I think you're getting a lot of that. Kristjan, thank you so much for the time you spent with us again. And always good to check in and see what's going on. It feels like every time we turn around, there's a new release, but this is superb. So thank you very much.
Cheers, buddy. All the best.